Hello, good evening, everybody.
Good afternoon, good evening.
Welcome to the panel. Welcome to everybody out there viewing us. We want to welcome you to this evening's panel discussion and let you know what's been going on here at CCCD. My name is Tashi Widmer. I'm the Executive Director of Caribbean Christian Center for the Deaf. I want to go ahead and let you know, share with you this evening, how life was pre-COVID-19 and after the impact of the pandemic and how our life's been affected here. Many of you can probably relate with the stories. This COVID epidemic has really had an impact and a change for all of us in trying to adjust to this new normal. So the impact not only that it's had on schools, but through the community, from place of worship, our personal lives, various areas of impact. So it has really had actually an extra layer of impact on our deaf community. Schools, we value our communication with JSL and having full access to that communication. But now through the epidemic, we've realized, without going to school and we're staying at home, we've had to switch some of our classes to online, and having to adapt to this has been quite a challenge. So we want to take this opportunity to share with you, our partners, our supporters, all of you. We want to share with you our experiences here, our founders, whether you support the campuses or the children, our ministry organizations here in Jamaica. So thank you for joining us, and thank you so very, very much. We're going to take this opportunity this evening to share with you what life's been looking like here for us. And as we continue to go on, we'll introduce our amazing panelists, both students and staff. But before we start the discussion, we want to introduce Sheldon, Pastor Sheldon Barrett. If he would please lead us in a word of prayer and blessing, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Let us join in prayer. Our loving Heavenly Father, this afternoon we are gathered together for the discussion of how we can allow you to be a part of our life and bless all of us as individuals. So we pray for your name, in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Sheldon. Thank you so very much. So the panelists that we have here this evening, we have a panelist of 6, 3 students. We have with us this evening Jerome Pindling. Our second student that we have with us is Donovan Hibbert. Welcome. And our third student is Damian Stewart. The 3 amazing teachers and instructors that we have with us this evening is Miss Samaj Hibbert, as well as Nardia Anderson, and Miss Imani Biggs. The 3 individuals, the teachers and the students, will be sharing with us their individual stories and take this opportunity to share with you some questions that I have here. So I'm going to start with Donovan. Donovan, I'm going to ask you a question first. So when you look back at your life pre-COVID, what was an average day like for you?
Good afternoon. I want to take this opportunity to say good afternoon. School was all right. We had our friends, teachers were there. Everything was looking perfect. And then out of nowhere appears COVID. And school was closed. Everyone went home. We were all panicking. Teachers were trying to get us to continue online schooling. They send us a lot of work, and that was okay, but we were panicking because of school closure, and There were so many things that were on our mind. So yes, that was just the little summary of what school was before the pandemic.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. I'm sorry, did you have something more that you wanted to say? No, you're good? Okay. So now I'm going to ask my question to Jerome. What was life like for you pre-COVID, before the onset of the pandemic? What was an average day in your life like?
Good afternoon, everyone. Before the pandemic affected us, school, I enjoyed it. The association was fantastic. I played football. We were enjoying our association. We were having fun. We gathered together and we had some fun time. So that was the idea of what school was before the pandemic hit us here in Jamaica.
Thank you. Thank you, Jerome, for sharing that. Ms. Samaj Hibbert, yes. Hi. So my question for you is, the experience with once COVID hit us, well, prior to COVID, were there challenges? And if so, how were you able to overcome those? Ms. Widmer, are you asking before or after? Okay, pre-COVID, okay. So pre-COVID, you know, we were in the classroom physically with the students. We were able to, you know, have one-on-one contact, communication, eye contact. We had resources available to us there in the classroom. We could be one-on-one to educate the students physically. We could go over their homework with them. We also had tutoring. This was pre-COVID, so we also had time during the day where we had activities, games, recess, playtime, just many different activities that we could do throughout the school day for the students pre-COVID. We had a lot of time to actually talk with the students, you know, and having one-on-one conversations. We could see facial markers, communication, expression. So really, access to communication was better. So, okay, yes, I agree with you, Samaj, that is so valuable to have that. So with the challenges that you just mentioned prior to COVID, are you saying that you didn't have any? Are you asking Ms. Widmer? Samaj. Samaj. One challenge that we've had after COVID is trying to connect online. So it would take hours, you know, trying to be patient. So then maybe we might have internet problems and we have to wait a few more minutes and it wouldn't really matter. And then, you know, sometimes you just feel like giving up. Thank you, Samaj. Thank you so much. I do see the challenges with access to internet that's compared to a classroom setting. It's got to be extremely difficult to try to overcome those challenges. Now I want to go to Amani Biggs, Miss Biggs. So can you share with us your experience, your challenges, and how you might handle them, how you've been able to cope with them? Hold. Thank you for holding for the interpreter. Yes, so I am a new instructor at the school and I've had many challenges pre-COVID. some of my problems would be like managing behaviors within the classroom. I would try to manage the children best I could. So I, at the same time, with the online access within the classroom that we didn't have so much. So the teachers there on campus, some of the classrooms didn't have any online access. So I would have to then be able to show the students. So another challenge was diversity. A lot of challenges. But, I just be patient and I try and we handle them the best that we can. Thank you. Thank you, Amani. Thank you very much for sharing. I can envision, yes, in the classroom setting, trying to manage all that from the behaviorals of each individual to the students with special needs and all the components that are required within a classroom. So there must be a lot of stimulus for the teachers as well. So also, how have you been able to, manage the diversity to be able to match each student's needs and try to figure out what their needs are? That's got to be a real challenge. So thank you very much for that. You're welcome. Thank you. Now I would like to ask back to Jerome. So when COVID came on and now, you haven't been to school, what is it that you miss most? Jerome?
Well, I missed the association with my friends, close contact with my friends. And because of the pandemic, we have to keep social distancing. We couldn't talk, we couldn't stay so close to each other. So we have to allow at least 3 or 6 feet apart. So it was pretty uncomfortable, but we tried to work with it because it is important to keep ourselves safe health-wise.
Absolutely. Nothing beats the experience of hanging out with friends and socializing. And now that you're so physically far apart from one another, that's definitely a challenge. Yes. Thank you, Jerome. So now I'd like to move on to Donovan. Hibbert, tell me, since being away from school since the onset of COVID, what do you miss?
Well, to start with, what I miss the most is the classroom. I feel like this pandemic is preventing us from doing what we ought to do, to focus on our kids, the students. So I miss the most for the classroom, being a part of the classroom. That's what I miss the most.
Absolutely. Being in a classroom compared to online learning is completely different. So in a classroom, we've got each other right there in the same space where we can brainstorm with each other. But when you're on class online, you've got to be 100% visual and you don't have anybody around to ask. Thank you. So these questions that we just went over, relating mostly to our pre-COVID. Now I want to talk about, I want to start with Narda, Ms. Anderson. I'm going to start with you. Talking about the days of COVID, how have you been able to remain positive and strong in your faith as we go through this continuous COVID? Yes, well, the onset of COVID, it was a huge first-time experience for me. I really didn't even understand what was happening and what was going on, quite frankly. It's been a lot for everybody. Having to resolve and try to stay positive, I try to stay focused on my work, teaching the students, a lot of prayer, staying true with my relationship and my faith with God. Thank you, Narda. So you said, trying to become peaceful. Yes, peace and stillness is important during a stressful time. Okay, so now, Amani, yes. Yeah, Ms. Widmer, during the onset of impact, when it first came on, it seemed like, a panic, paranoia for everybody. It was quite overwhelming. So we did a lot of praying, asking for peace and guidance. And the teachers online, we have to remember a lot of our students don't have access to online communication. So we would have to oftentimes reach out to parents through phones. We'd have to try to get the parents to help their students get online, but if they don't have online accessibility, so it's been a real challenge. Thank you, Amani, for sharing that with us. This is really touching my heart, how you've gone through your faith by reaching out to the parents and trying to help them, encourage them to stay involved with their children so that they can have the access to learning. Wow, I just owe you a debt of gratitude. Thank you so much. Samaj, I'd like to turn it over to you, and then from there we'll go back to Jerome. So Samaj, how has COVID impacted you? Well, first I can look back, and I remember hearing about COVID and this pandemic and what we were going to do. And I remember, how are we going to continue the education? And because the education system here in Jamaica, when they decided to close all the schools, and then we had to send our students home. And I remember on TVJ, they were having education classes, but all those programs are for the hearing students. And at first I thought it was great because they're online, but for our children, I was worried about them because inside, broke my heart. I love our children and I love teaching the students, and because they didn't have on TVJ, they didn't have the interpreter, so the education wasn't accessible to them. So I was very worried, very concerned about them. But I did a lot of praying. I knew I had to trust God. My children have really just very little experience with technology. So that was a huge struggle, as a deaf teacher, too, not to mention the children, but we thank God every day. Sorry, I've lost Tashai. There she is. Thank you so much for sharing that. I can see where that would be a real struggle. And I'm happy, Samaj, that you've been able to work through this and been able to contact the students and come up with ways to reach out to them. And Ms. Widmer, I still am. Yeah, thank you so much. So Jerome, I'd like to hear what you have to add to that.
We just have to try to manage the students the best way we possibly can. We have to try to use some form of platform to continue to teach them. And in that way, we are easy to get distracted. So we try our very best to see how best we can have them to keep their attention on us as educators. So it was, because of internet access, it was really awful, but we tried to work through our challenges that we face.
That is definitely one challenge. The online classroom, the students are still trying to stay positive and trying to learn the best they can and take advantage of the online classroom, but it's really, really challenging. Yeah, this is Samaj. I would like to add also, not all of the parents in Jamaica have data. Some of them have limited amount of data, and then once they go through that, then they don't have access anyway. So that's been a real problem, a real trouble, a real struggle for that. So that has been another direct effect from COVID. It's really a challenging time for the deaf students with the online learning and teachers both. It's been.
That is so true. I agree with Samaj.
And Amani? Yeah, and some don't even have phones, cell phones. So parents don't have phones. If they have to go to work, they have to take their phone with them. So maybe we might not even get a hold of a parent till the late afternoon or evening. So and students are tired at that point. It's just been a really tough time. I second that, Namani. That's really very true. Yes, we're going to turn now to Donovan.
And also the tablet or laptop usage. It is very difficult to have internet access because some person doesn't have a tablet or a laptop to use. Sometimes the parents is using them, so the students doesn't have the access to the online classes that we offer.
That's very true. You know, listening to all of you and your stories, it kind of leads me to my next question. Let's throw it out to all of you. So what are some of the negatives and positives? Well, we talked about with the children don't have data, the parents don't have data. That's a real negative. For the students that don't have laptops and they can't join in the classroom. So have you thought about that? What are some of the other challenges in the classroom, not in the classroom, but outside of the classroom? And how do you stay positive, not in the classroom? Jerome? I'm sorry, could you say that question again?
You were freezing. You were freezing. I missed the question. Please repeat.
Oh, sure, no problem. I'm happy to repeat it. So we just shared about the challenges of COVID in the classroom, right? So now I want to think about what some of the positives are. Doesn't matter, not in the classroom, like maybe online. What are some of the positives?
Well, I can start with the positive. Well, we continue to try to do our job by the online classes. Sometimes students are reluctant in joining, but we try our very best to find out who have data, who have internet access, so they can be a part of the classes. So who doesn't have, we still try our very best to contact them. And sometimes we may have WhatsApp group, messaging group. So we try that medium on trying to get them to participate in the classes. So some persons may say that they can't bother with the videoing or online videoing, but either way, we try to conquer the bad with the good.
Thank you for sharing. Yes, now I would like to hear from the teacher's perspective, please. Go ahead, Narda. Well, one of the positives from the online classes is actually an improvement in writing. So you know, written English form is not first language for a deaf community. So I have noticed that whether it's texting communication back and forth or writing or typing, that I have seen an improvement in the written language. That's one positive. Yeah, okay, Samaj, you had something? Yes, I was going to add to that, that also I've noticed the same, that the children's writing has, compared to pre-COVID, you know, the students, they, you know, we sign because it's our first language. But now, sometimes I would go to read a written sentence, I really couldn't make it out, or I need some time. And they could ask, you know, what about this word? What about that word? And now it's allowed us time to elaborate on definitions from each word. So with the technology itself, but in the classroom, we don't use the technology too much. So that's been one positive. But I agree with what Imani said too. But you know, sometimes hooking it up and trying to get a hold of the parents if they're off to work, and then we have to hurry and try to catch up with that communication. But the writing, definitely, I've seen students is definitely having an improving of their written English form. Thank you. Jerome.
For the students, sometimes then they have a very affordable phone, not expensive, not that good. Sometimes it creates a lot of barriers in order to communicate with them through whatever platforms we use. So sometimes it creates frustration. So that's one of the negatives. So I don't know, but we try to work through it either way. But at times it gets very frustrating.
Yeah. Narda. Yes, I would like to add one thing to this about the online classroom. So coming to school, you know, the teacher's right there and the student can ask for help and assistance. So that's a real positive, being in a classroom. Great. Thank you so much for sharing your perspectives, everyone. So myself as an administrator, I love hearing from the staff and faculty and students. It helps me to become more motivated and inspired to become more creative with ideas, how to solve some of these challenges. Like if the student doesn't have a phone or if they have limited data. I know we can't maybe extend a Zoom conference if we have limited data. Maybe if they don't have access to a tablet.
That's so true. That is so true.
So I do see that a lot myself as being an administrator. Yes, Jerome, you were going to add something?
Sometimes if they have a tablet or a phone, they will download the information there, but sometimes it is important to have a backup. So if they have a backup camera, they will say, yeah, they'll turn the front of the phone away from them and agree, share their comments, then return it to the front of the phone to continue a discussion. So sometimes it can be very difficult, but it's pretty funny, but those students have to work with that.
Yeah, I can imagine, you know, just trying to do that on a phone. It's got to be tough and challenging for sure. So we all know the whole world right now is being affected by the pandemic. We know that. So I just want to ask you, have any of you or your families or friends been directly affected by COVID? Anybody? Amani? Your family's all okay? Yes, everybody in my family is fine. Nobody's contracted the virus. Samaj? Yeah, my family's healthy as an ox. Nothing here. We're challenged for COVID. You're so silly. Yes, Narda. My family has been fine. Nobody has tested positive. That's fantastic. And Donovan?
Nothing yet, nothing yet. And we're hopeful that we continue being healthy. But to remember that everything with God's grace will keep safe. We'll keep safe.
Yes. True. And Jerome?
My family is all right. We are in perfect health, and we are very grateful that we continue to keep safe in this pandemic that we're facing right now.
Yes, Jonathan. So I know that you have been working and studying both. So when you go to work, what are some of the measures that you have in place to protect yourself, to keep yourself safe? What are some of the things that you do?
Well, to keep ourselves safe, what we do is before entering, we put on our mask before entering. And while we're there, about to eat, we can go outside and to get our meal. We use hand sanitizers very often before we enter the building. That's one of the ways we keep ourselves safe, because we know that being too close to each other, we will spread this virus, which we don't know who have it. So we try to apply all those measures in order to keep ourselves safe.
Excellent. Thank you, Donovan. And Jerome, I have a question for you. So when you go back to school and when you go for the individual test, the CSC test, when you're in a classroom setting, what are the things that you're thinking about, measures that you can take to protect yourself and the students around you?
Well, for what I've been thinking about to keep myself safe is to make sure that I use hand sanitizers very often, and also continue to wear the mask, which is very important. We try to keep at least 6 feet social distancing. We try to not go below that. So if we need to talk or communicate or do anything, we try to keep ourselves 6 feet apart, and also to continue to observe social distancing. And also, if we have to touch something for the traffic areas, we try to keep those areas clean. We also try to have sanitizing stations where everyone can use sanitizers as often as possible.
Excellent. Thank you, Jerome. It is very, very important to keep the hands washed and sanitized. Also maintain your mask and your social distancing, 6 feet minimum. So here in Jamaica, our culture tends to be, especially deaf culture with it, we're very physical. We tend to hug each other. We tend to be very close proximity to one another.
Oh yes, that is
Now,
so.
we are limited on how close we can get. It's really hard, especially if you're signing, and you want to be able to see the facial expressions, and it's really hard. But I understand that it's very important to not only keep ourselves safe, but those around us as well. So Jerome and Donovan, you're right. You don't know who's carrying it. You just don't know. So it's important that we always take safety measures first. So now that we've talked about pre-COVID and the impacts that's been happening since March, I want to ask you, what are some of the things that you've learned from this experience and the ongoing experiences? When you look back, what are some of the lessons that you've pulled out? Narda, how about we start with you first? Well, when I teach in a classroom, having the lesson plan and order, but then when COVID hit, we just had to make do and rush everything and try to be on our toes, lines. So that's one thing I pulled away is be ready. Jerome?
For me, we have learned a lot of things. Pre-COVID, we were in school doing what we need to do, knowing what is very important to keep ourselves clean. But our habit now is to keep ourselves, and especially our hands, clean. That's what we learned during the COVID pandemic.
Yes, I'd like to add, just because I want to pick on somebody for a little bit here. The young people, they like to, eat messy and then just use their hands to wipe their face or pull up their shirt to wipe off. So I'm wondering, if those habits are still in place, or now with COVID, we're all a little more mindful of washing.
Oh yes, definitely. You're so right, Mrs. Widmer.
Okay. Yeah, Samaj, yes, what were you going to say? I wanted to add something that I've learned. Well, pre-COVID, we didn't use much technology. We played a lot of games. We did a lot of hands-on activities. But now, since the impact has hit, we've actually gained a knowledge with technology. So now we can go online, and if it's the first time for a student to learn, then we have to get up in the morning, or we have to get on with the Zoom or face on camera, or communicate through texting. So being in the classroom, sometimes we do a little bit of work and then have nothing for an hour. But now we have more one-on-one communication every day and constant contact. So I'm valuing that time together with students more. So technology has had an added benefit from that. Yes, Amani. What I have learned is patience. I have to be very, very patient because technology and online, sometimes I'll be ready to teach, but the internet isn't ready for me. It's down. I can't get connected, whatever the situation be. I might have to make several attempts. So I've learned a great amount of patience. Also with my students, they may not have an understanding of how they need to set up the camera. For example, if I'm teaching and I'm given an explanation on something, and I'll have to repeat myself over and over and over again, and then it may take a few attempts, finally the student to be like, oh, I got it, okay. So patience. Oh yeah, for me, sometimes I get so annoyed with technology, for sure. Also, Imani here, I just want to add one more thing. Sometimes I'll be ready and it'll just drop. I'll be connected, I'll be ready to go, and the internet connection just drops for no apparent reason. Yes, Jerome, go ahead.
One thing that I see for teachers, for students preparing for 6 in the morning, you have the student classes, then you set up the video camera for the students and they're ready. So they come close to the camera and then you're ready to explain about the following discussion, and then internet issues start to arise. Sometimes while the teacher is teaching, they're lagging behind because of the internet bandwidth. So that is some of the problems that we've been experiencing. So because of that, the students miss a lot of the information. So it creates a lot of frustration. And or just want to add, or if the teacher or the students is signing, the parents have called them for a minute or so and they waste a lot of time, and because of that, it creates a lot of distraction and it causes the teacher to elaborate too much on a particular subject. So we can see where it creates a lot of frustration because of being distracted. So that is just some few things that we have to work through.
Yes, that is an excellent example and how we need to practice patience. I know I've been tested in that area myself, and I'll just have to step back and take a breath and calm down for a minute. So thank you so much. So now I have a question for the panel about our future as we look ahead. We'll start with, oh wait, Donovan, I'm sorry, you didn't answer. You didn't answer the question about what you've learned coming through the pandemic. Well, we're still in it, but going so far. What have you learned?
Well, for this pandemic, I have some free time, of course. I have some time by myself, and then you just have to start to think through things. You can't give up on doing what you plan to do when it comes down to the classroom and access to the students. So sometimes you're focused and then someone touch you and you get distracted, and you just have to try to do your best at all times. So through this pandemic, there's a lot of lessons I've learned, and I just want to continue to apply them. When it comes down to entering the classroom, how often a person have to keep on touching you. So my experience has been a great one, and I plan to apply what I've learned for the future.
Yes, that's so true. We have to learn how to balance between work, online school, before COVID, the things that we've had to learn during COVID, taking care of yourself, knowing how to manage your time at home and at work. So definitely maintaining the balance. I agree. Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, moving on to the question regarding our future and our hopes. Question for all of you, for the panelists. So if, hopefully everything's going to work out in our favor and we get to go back to school, the campus is open in the fall, and we're allowed to go back. You know, we're going to have to set up trainings and measures to protocols to protect and to keep the environment safe. So as you think about it personally, how will you protect yourself? And then as hopefully if we get to go back to school in the fall. So I'm going to start with Narda again. Well, of course, I'm going to follow what the government orders in place for everybody for the country of Jamaica to maintain safety. If that means maintaining a mask, washing the hands often, and social distancing. And personally in my life, you know, I will make sure to keep myself safe by staying, you know, away from others, staying within the classroom, making sure that even in the classroom, I'm distancing from the students and wearing a mask for the whole time. I know that there's going to be some barriers because we won't be able to see facial expressions. So at times, if I need to remove the mask for full access to communication, you know, we'll have to do that. We'll have to manage at a safe distance, you know, but first and foremost is following the rules in place by the government. Yes, Narda, you're right about the mask, that it is very, very important, but it's not deaf friendly at all. It blocks our non-manual markers, our facial communications. So having sign without the facial expressions is definitely, the mask becomes a barrier for us in communication. You know, I can't see through the mask, but I have seen some where they have transparency around the mask, and then you can get the non-manual markers that way. So those are pretty cool. Thank you. So next, Jerome.
Well, we just have to follow the hand washing protocol and the social distancing protocol as well, because sometimes students love to play, and it is very hard to keep that social distancing at 6 feet apart, because many times they love to touch, and so it is very hard to continue to obey that precautionary measure. So yes, I already said that the experience, the transparent mask would be cool to have, where you can see around the mask or around your mouth, but sometimes when it's raining, it is very hard to see. Same as when it is raining, it creates a frost on the window. So it's the same with wearing a mask. At times, that your breath creates that steamy effect, because, and also it creates issue breathing as well. So that's just some of the challenges that we've been facing.
Yes, that's very true. I've had that experience before wearing a mask. And if I can't see the interpreter's mouth very clearly, or if they have the transparency, it begins to fog up through the moisture of their mouth, so they'll have to move the mask down. So yes, it's a valid point. Next, Amani Biggs. Yeah, I know it's going to be tough if we go back. You know, the kids are going to want to run up to us. We're going to want to run up to them and hug them. You know, I know, like, but we can't, because it's not going to be comfortable. And we have to try to explain, we still have to maintain social distancing. And also with the use of the mask, not being able to see the facial expressions as a teacher, it's limiting full access to the communication information that the teachers deliver. So the teachers and students, we definitely will have to maintain solid hand washing and masks. Yeah, I'll never forget one time the children, they just love to run up and hug you. They climb on you and and I have to kind of step back but that's a very valid point. We have to remind them on a regular basis that we love them, but we have to stay at a safe distance. Donovan.
Well, recently at school, we have the sanitization station set up. We're wearing the masks, the seating established 6 feet apart. So now we have to adjust the seating even more. So it is funny to teach in a classroom where the students are far apart from each other. Even sometimes when you're greeting each other, we have to use the elbow greet. So yes, it is pretty challenging, of course.
Yeah, for sure. Right. Can't fist bump, thumb tap. We can't. Samaj, what are your plans? What do you see the future? Well, same as everybody's comments. My concern is about physical distancing. So in the teacher's room, the classroom, we go into work, we have to maintain distancing. So it's so hard to see if we're so far apart from each other, and we're used to working closely together and being able to explain to the students. But it will be a challenge, but we'll get through it. I sure hope that we get back to school in the classroom in the fall. And of course, wearing the mask as well. I don't like the blockage, the barrier for the facial expressions, but we'll manage. Right, masks are extremely important. Hand washing, sanitizing. So I have a question regarding the masks for you all. So are you comfortable with the masks? Do they bother you? Do they annoy you? Have you gotten used to them at this point? What are your thoughts? For me, Monty Biggs here. I don't like masks. I struggle breathing with them sometimes, so I really, really don't. I'm not crazy about them. Donovan.
Well, with the mask, it is painful around the ear. You suffer,
Yeah.
actual suffer around the ear. But if you remove it, it heals and it creates a lot of issue.
Yes, yes. Samaj. Yeah, also with signing, the words, if the mask, sometimes deaf people, we tend to use one hand, but if we can't with the mask and we're missing half of the information because the mask is blocking the facial expressions. So sometimes communication is not always thorough. Yes, Jerome.
For 2 months, we're in the mask for 2 months. Wow, it will bring your hairs forward. But after the COVID, I think your hairs will be put back to the proper place where it was before. So I don't know. It's just stressful to use a mask. It's really funny.
That is okay. That's so funny. It's possible. You're wearing them day in and day out, and it's pushing the ears forward. I don't know. Maybe we'll have to
Oh
reverse
yes, that is so true,
that.
Mrs. Whitmer.
Tack the ears back. Thank you. Hello, Damien.
Hello.
Damien, you made
Yes,
it.
I'm all right.
Good to see you. So we've been doing a lot of panel discussion, and we're nearing the wrap up. Glad you're here. So I want to ask you a question. We're just having a general discussion right now, seeing if anybody has any questions. Okay.
No problem.
Narda, you were going to say something. Yes. Personally, me, when I have to wear the mask all day, I can't. I have to take breaks throughout the day. Yes, I agree. Let's see, Jerome.
Yes, so sometimes you have to remove and replace, remove and replace. But why? But why? Why is that so? Okay,
Well,
I see what you're
for
saying.
me, Nardia speaking for myself, I just need some fresh air. I just need to remove the mask to get a breath of fresh air.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you all. So, Damien, so I'm going to ask you the same question that I just asked the panelists. Hopefully, we get to return to school in the fall. And if we do go back and moving forward, we're discussing some actions that we can do to protect ourselves and the people around us and the students, you know, in addition to hand washing and the mask. So what are some of the things that you foresee that you can do to protect yourself and others?
Well, if we return to school back in September, we'd have to keep obeying the protocol of social distancing. We have to continue to wear masks daily. If we need to do anything whatsoever, if we have to go outside daily, a mask is a must just to protect ourselves and protect ourselves from COVID and protect others in the end as well.
Yes, thank you for your answer. I have several hands going up. Smaj and then Amani. Smaj, go ahead. Yes, so Damien had just said about the social distancing. So when I think about school and the kitchen, you know, that's a big concern of mine. So how are we going to handle the sitting arrangements? Some people might have to sit outside, some people might have to sit inside. So, you know, our cafeteria is not that large, but we're going to have to maintain at the school. So that's quite a challenge of the deaf schools that we're going to have to face. I don't want to go outside. I really don't. You're so funny. Yeah, Amani. Yes, I was going to say also the dorms, you know, sleeping. Does that mean the kids are going to have to sleep with their masks on? You know, that's another consideration we haven't even thought about. Very, very true. Very true. Yeah, so we'll have to maintain the distancing and the mask possibly. Drum. Yes, go ahead.
Well, I totally agree with Damien. It doesn't matter what we're doing, we just have to follow through on wearing a mask. It doesn't matter if it's in the cafeteria. We just have to try our best to eat while using the mask.
You're very funny. Damien?
Well, we won't have a lot of students, we'll just have a few. So social distancing, I think, would be easy to follow with. So we just have to make sure that we set up the areas properly, social distancing, so we can always have space and not have any issue when it comes down to being too close with each other. So I guess we can work through. Well, outside, a mask is a must. In the cafeteria, we have to be very careful. We can remove the mask and just eat our food and just return the mask where it needs to be. But we just have to obey what the government says.
You're all right. Yep. Pull the mask down while we eat. And then at the Patrick campus, you know, same thing there. Well, we're much bigger there in Kingston and Mobay, but regardless of the size, we've got to make sure that we keep the mask on, remove it for meals, and
I
then
totally agree, Mrs. Widmer.
yeah, so we have a couple comments from Facebook. So also, you know, we've got to check temperatures. We forgot about that. That's very, very important, right? Temperature checking. So thank you for that reminder.
Thank you as well. Thank you very much.
So very important. Because if we notice the temperature increasing on anybody, that's a red flag right there. So myself, like when we go into the gate, we have to make sure that at 39 Celsius, can't be that, I'd be dead. but we have to make sure that the thermometer is working correctly as well, and we have to check everybody's temperature.
Well, that's funny, Mrs. Widmer.
So also other comment, I see a lot of hands going up. So
Hi, everyone. Hi, hi.
say hello. So any comments or questions before we close, before we wrap up the discussion from anybody? Big thank you from Amani Biggs. Thank you so much for viewing, everybody, for tuning in.
Thank you very much as
Yes,
well,
thank
sending from
you.
Jerome and also Donovan. Thank you, everyone, for your support. I hope that we will all follow on what is needed to be done and keep ourselves safe.
Yes, I'd like to add something here. Go ahead, Samaj. In the fall, we're still waiting to see if we're open or not. But going back to taking off the mask when we eat, we have to remember that COVID can also travel through the air. It can land on objects. So, and it has been proven to stay alive on objects. So that's something else that we need to look at. So maybe if you have the mask on, you're communicating, but then you take the mask off and you eat, and you put it back on, you take it off repeatedly. This virus has been proven to travel, be airborne, and then it can land. And then what happens if it lands on the mask and you place the mask back on? You're absolutely right. And that's even more reason that we take extra precautions to sanitize and wash the hands regularly all day, and change the mask out several times. Money. Yes, I don't know. We need to have more than 2 masks each, maybe 4 or 5. Some will get misplaced, some will get lost. No sharing of the mask, but we need to have several masks available for everybody. Maybe even labeling the mask with the staff names, the student names. That way they don't get mixed up. We know whose is who. One more comment I want to share from Facebook. The government has announced this month, we're going to go ahead and encourage the schools to apply. So thank you
very much. Thank you very much.
Okay, last call for comments before we close. Anybody? We just want to say thank you very much to our supporters. Any comments from the panelists? Jerome, go ahead.
Well, now we are live. A lot of persons are there watching us. We just want to encourage everyone to be safe. Continue to observe and obey the government's precautionary measures. Mask wearing to protect yourself and protect each other, and to keep yourself safe, and to continue to keep your hands clean as well. If you think that you have any symptoms of COVID, we encourage you to stay home, because you don't know what will happen. So I would just encourage everyone to take the opportunity, remember what you have shared, and stay home if you have any symptoms of COVID.
Yes, Damien, you had something you want to add? Go ahead, Damien, your turn.
Okay, thank you. Well, just understanding about September, it will be hard. And the reason for that is that students, they love to play, they love to gather together. They don't like to stay home because they feel isolated. They want to see their friends, they want to be in the association of their friends. So staying home for months, it's going to be really hard for them. So I guess starting school in September will be very difficult.
Yes, you're absolutely right. So we're so used to getting together. It's a vital part of our culture, you know, communicating and hanging out and being physically close to one another. But now that we're having the distancing and the online classes, what school might look like in September when it opens, you know, we'll have to see what happens as the conversations continue, the measures that we can put in place to maintain that everyone's safe. So right now, we have a management team at the school, and we've been in constant conversations and meetings trying to develop a policy to put in place for this September. And we'll get that out to everybody as soon as it's ready. Thank you. So Jerome, wrap it up for us, and then we'll close.
In a brief point, it's very hard to wear a mask and show your facial expression. And if you're laughing, a lot of person may not be able to see it, and person may say that you're boring even if you're laughing because they can't see what you're doing. So sometimes you have to remove the mask just to laugh so a person can see that you're actually smiling.
That is definitely a negative for the mask. You know, you might be communicating with somebody and you're not sure about the response because you can't see their facial expression. So yes, it is definitely not friendly at all, but safety first. Okay. Now, from CCCD, I want to thank all of you for your support, your partners, donors, panelists, for all of you giving us your attention this evening and your continued support. CCD would not be able to do this without you, so we owe you a debt of gratitude. Thank you so very, very much. And I have to say thank you to the interpreters as well, Diane Black and Danique Berberin. Sorry, interpreter Eric can't say his last name. From Miss Widmer, thank you so very much, panelists, for joining this discussion. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. Attendees, I hope that you learned something, and our aim is to do this every so often, bring you up to date, keep you informed, so let's stay in touch. Thank you again, all of you. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Thanks for viewing us this evening.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
But I couldn't pronounce Nami's last name. Pronounce it how I struggle to pronounce last name. I'm so sorry. But